Attention, this is Martin H. at Temporal Discussion, login experiment TD14F. The time, the early 90s. Make a TV series that's a cross between LARPing and Challenge Annika, and you can alter the very fabric of children's television. In the 21st century, detailed information on a certain Broadsword Productions BBC Two show has been mostly mislaid. A basic Wikipedia page, a brief mention on the Nightmare Lexicon and UK game shows, and a complete absence of an IMDb page. But we will find it, watch it, and use it to provide a complete episode retrospective of TimeBusters. Welcome, Time Vandals, to Temporal Discussion, the episode-by-episode Nightmare Retrospective podcast. I'm Martin Harder, and I'm joined for this very special episode by the one and only Jason Karl.
Hello, nice to be here again.
For this special podcast episode, we'll once again be taking a look at the CBBC game show TimeBusters. The show was broadcast on Sunday mornings and ran for 3 series from 17th of January 1993 to 22nd of January 1995. And yes, I said series. I'm getting complaints from some of our American listeners. Oh, when you say series, do you mean seasons? No, I mean series. I'm British.
In television speak, actually, in the UK now, most people do refer to such things as seasons certainly for the last few years.
That's true.
Yeah, it is an Americanization. Yeah, TV series, kind of a thing of the past. But then so is this.
I'm old school anyway.
Yeah, I am too. And I think I'm probably older than you.
We don't have the exact broadcast date for the episode we'll be looking at today, but we do know that it was part of Series 3. The episode's the first of 2 to take place at Parc de Futuroscope, a theme park in France that utilizes attractions showcasing cinematographic and multimedia methods. Along with other attractions and events, some of which are the only ones in the world, it has a number of 3D and a few 4D theatres. The park's architecture and theming lend themselves well to the futuristic setting of this episode, despite one glaring flaw that we'll point out later on. This episode is set in the far-off future time of September 2010 and takes place in the imaginatively named Futuroscope City. I always love it when shows like this don't quite set their future episodes far enough into the future.
There's a lot of things about it which we'll talk about, I'm sure, but I just rewatched this episode prior to this recording, and there's so many big errors in it.
And now podcast capsule activated, retrospective analysis confirmed.
As in the previous episode we looked at, this one begins with Dr. Paradox on board a space station, talking into what appears to be some form of comms device. He details the plan to target Futuroscope City and destroy virtual reality.
Attention, this is Paradox at Vandal Command. Logging experiment AX14F. The time will be September 2010. Our target is Futuroscope City. Our mission, to destroy virtual reality. Travel to the past for us, but travel to the future for those who would oppose us. It's one way of making this awfully tough for TimeBusters.
This is a bit confusing for me. You know, we've got this nefarious, all-powerful Dr. Paradox, the villain of the piece. And what's he going to do? Destroy virtual reality.
Yeah.
It's quite a low bar in terms of a villain, I think.
It is. It's interesting to kind of look at what virtual reality was actually like then compared to how it is now.
Absolutely. And of course, this is the same time that Broadsword Television and Tim were doing Cyberzone, which was a reflection of virtual reality as it was at that time. And although at the time it was sort of cutting edge, it still wasn't very good. It wasn't good enough for making a television production, but it was pioneering. It was the first virtual reality television show, Cyberzone. And so virtual reality was obviously something of great interest to television producers and obviously to Tim.
It's interesting because the way it's developed is, like you say, back then it wasn't good enough to have an entire TV show based around it. But it's now got to the stage where it's kind of gone completely the other direction in that it's now so commonplace.
Yeah, that it doesn't deserve a television show because you can do the real thing yourself rather than watch someone else do it on telly. But
Yeah.
it wasn't Broadsword's first foray because, of course, there were elements of the satellite game, which was before Cyberzone and before TimeBusters, which I know you haven't done an episode about, and perhaps that's an idea for something else, which I was on that show. That included very early stage virtual reality graphics, but it wasn't the entire show. It was a very small part of the show, unlike Cyberzone, which relied on it completely.
But even Cyberzone wasn't really what I would call full virtual reality, was it? They were still standing in front of a big screen. They didn't have like helmets or anything, did they?
No, that's correct. But what I meant by that was that the entire content of the show centered around that, whereas within the satellite game, it didn't. And the majority of that was not virtual reality. But yeah, you're right. I mean, in Cyberzone, there were two people in each team. One of them was the sort of operator of the Cyberzone, and whether that was banging your feet on the floor or pressing a button or whatever. And the other one had a map, as we always get in a lot of broadsword television shows, and was directing where their cyborg in the virtual world should go. And the map actually is quite interesting. The maps in Cyberzone, if you look at them, they're very similar to the maps in TimeBusters in terms of the sort of way they're produced and the level of artistry that is shown.
The setup that they actually had for Cyberzone, it kind of developed, didn't it, into what Televirtual were doing for the Nightmare VR pilot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was beginning of that sort of phase, I suppose. And you had also the Vactor technology, which very much Broadsword were involved with that, and an early user of that technology, whereby the face of a performer is looked at, scanned, watched by cameras, and thus interpreted by a computer program as a virtual head or face.
Your mission wasn't just tough. It was virtually impossible.
And obviously we had that in Nightmare with the Brolican, and we have it in TimeBusters, because by the time we get to this series we're talking about now, series 3, the living presenters are long gone, and we are presented by a red head known as Buster, which is a manifestation of the bus itself, wonderfully performed by Nicholas Collett, who did various things with Broadsword television over the years.
Yeah.
Emergency! Vandal incursion time zone 104. Energy capsule activated. Interference confirmed. Time vandal active. Full alert. Stand by, team. TimeBusters prepare for immediate boarding. Boarding, TimeBusters, now!
As the team board the bus, Buster informs them that the instruments say they're traveling to the future. Today's controllers are 14-year-old Rosie Armstrong and 13-year-old David Mills. The ICAM operators, also known as runners, are 13-year-old Adam Collette and 13-year-old Becky Dome. Now, do we know if Adam Collette is any relation to Nick Collette?
I would have no way of knowing that at all. I suppose somebody could contact Nick and ask him.
They are affiliated with Bedford School and Bedford High School, presumably in Bedford, Bedfordshire.
Great. Verification complete. All our equipment is now locked to your faces and your voices. Grab the handrails, everyone, because here we go. Attention, TVs. Mission running. Time bus now stable in time zone 104 and power draining at standard rates. That means we have a strict time limit to complete this mission, then we must abandon or abort. And time is what this is all about. Only this time, we've got to stop Paradox and his vandals from tampering with our future.
This is interesting because up until this series, which is the last series, series 3 or season 3, if you wish it to be known as a season, all of the adventures, all of the missions have been in the past. So the traveling through time has been backward. And in this season alone, we have 2 episodes which are in the future, which is quite I think it's quite an exciting thing to attempt within the fictional world of TimeBusters. Of course, you can go forwards as well as back, but of course, as a television production filmed on location, that poses immense potential problems. How on earth do you represent some sort of utopian imagined future on camera without having to spend a fortune on building a set yourself? And of course, the answer is find a location which looks like it's something from a perceived future. And Futuroscope theme park in Poitiers in France was a brilliant choice, I think. And it is spectacular. The buildings and the design and aesthetic of it, it is like nothing else. And so from that point of view, it's, absolutely a brilliant decision. But of course, it's in another country. So I can imagine, although I don't know, that would have brought with it huge extra problems in terms of television production. Not least, you've got to take the bus and everybody else to France. And therefore, once you are there, to make the most of budget, do 2 episodes rather than 1. And that's what they did. And jolly good on them for doing that. And they used the same cast in both of the episodes. The characters were slightly different. Obviously, 2 different missions, 2 different stories. But the same cast members did both episodes. And I can imagine from the kids' point of view, the contestants, the runners and ICAM operators, it must have been more exciting than normal, because not only were they going on a TV show that might be filmed at Newstead Abbey or wherever in England where they may have been before, but they're actually going to France abroad. So it must have been very exciting for them.
And to a theme park as well.
Absolutely, and they're quite careful in the scripting and the pre-recorded vignettes with the characters not to say that. But the kids do sometimes refer to it as the park, but of course they do, because they know they're at a theme park. So to ask them to maintain that fictional reality of this is Futuroscope City in the future is a big ask, of course, and what also made me laugh an awful lot was the extras, the actual theme park guests who were clearly asked to become involved in the narrative. I found that absolutely hilarious. Anyway, I'm sure we'll come to that.
Scanners on. Stations, please, and I'll try and get you some pictures of the problem. OK. It looks like a 21st century city, but scanners report no shops or malls. In fact, no trading. Lots of people, though.
The scanner shows us Futuroscope City in all its glory. The architecture is quite frankly magnificent, but Buster's comment about there being lots of people brings us to the issue that, we were just discussing. Compagnie des Alpes, the owner of the theme park, would not allow it to be closed during the filming of the episode. This means that all the inhabitants of this future city walk around in early 90s fashion, openly staring at cameras they see, and at anybody wandering around with big bulky crash helmets on. What I did notice about this footage is that when I was watching it, I suddenly recognised it all, because I have memories of Futuroscope being advertised on television when I was younger.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never heard of it until I saw this episode of TimeBusters. Since then, of course, I've looked it up, but I've never been there. Have you been there?
No. I've had a few trips to France, but I've never been to Futuroscope.
It does look brilliant. I mean, from the point of its design, never mind the actual attractions there, it looks really good. I would like to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's still open, so...
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, they've got a pretty decent roller coaster there now as well.
Oh, have they? Well, I don't think they had rides back in those days. I think it was all the virtual reality, which, of course, of its time, in the early 90s, would have been incredibly exciting and not unique, but it would have been unusual. So I'm sure it would have been incredibly popular.
It was more like motion simulators, like the original Star Tours, that kind of thing.
But 4D attractions, yeah, where they spray water at you or the seat moves or whatever to make it 4-dimensional. And of course, the show, if you kind of read between the lines, they haven't really done anything to make it other than what it is, other than say it's a theme park. They've kept the name, probably because the kids might have said the name, because they would have known the name, because they're there, it's a theme park. So they've called it Futuroscope City rather than try and name it as something else. And it's still a virtual reality entertainment complex, as it actually is, because you couldn't pretend it's something that it's not, because of, as you say, it wasn't privately opened for this filming, and therefore you have all of these wonderful supporting artists, not extras, walking around, some of whom provide a wonderful performance of feeling sick, I have to say. So the premise of the problem that Dr. Paradox is creating here is that he's gone to the future in order to destroy virtual reality. It's not explained why or why that would be a bad thing particularly, but that's his heinous crime in this episode, and he has his assistant with him. But the way he does this is by making people feel sick when they go into a virtual reality experience. If I was a villainous time-traveling doctor with nefarious intent, I think I would think of something slightly worse than that. So it's maybe it's fair to say it's a bit of a weak premise. That perhaps that's just my opinion. Maybe other people disagree.
I mean, he basically invents the motion simulator ride.
Yeah. Which is not particularly evil, nefarious, and not perhaps the activity of an arch villain who travels through time. Who knows? Maybe he's actually a bit nicer on the side and sometimes isn't so bad. And of course, we get his accomplice in this one, which is sometimes called Mr. Enigma and sometimes called Enigma, who is a secondary time vandal to Dr. Paradox and is getting sort of told off by Dr. Paradox for being a bumbling fool half the time in a very similar fashion to Lord Fear and Lissard. And actually, the person playing Enigma stroke Mr. Enigma is the same actor who plays Lissard, Clifford Barry.
Yeah, of course it is. I knew I recognised him. I couldn't think why. I'm not used to seeing him without all the makeup on.
Yes, absolutely. And he has two costumes in this particular episode of TimeBusters. So originally we see him as Mr. Enigma or Enigma, the secondary time vandal. And then later on he's pretending to be a member of staff at the park, the very lovely name of Marc Dubois. And he has a wonderful toupee on when he is Marc Dubois. So he is no longer bald. He has a toupee on his head. In quite a good change to his appearance, I should say. So he's really fundamental to this. And he very much like the Lissard and the Lord Fear relationship and interaction that we get on Nightmare. Very similar to what we get here between Paradox and Mr. Enigma stroke Enigma.
To complete their mission, the team have to find the time capsule hidden in the area and return it to the bus. We are reminded what one looks like and that it allows time vandals to travel between time zones.
The intro to TimeBusters is obviously largely the same thing, just copied and pasted into the edit for each show. Not all of it, but some of it is. And the Infosys sections, where we get the premise of the universe, Infosys says this is who Dr. Paradox is, he has different appearances, blah, blah, blah. It's the same in every episode. However, in that information, it says, by sabotaging the past. And it still says that in this episode, even though this is in the future. They haven't re-edited that or changed it or reshot it to allow for the fact that this one isn't in the past, is in the future.
Yeah, but I think it's mentioned at the beginning it's in their past. So it's in our future, but it's in their past.
Is it?
I think so. I'll have to go back and check that. Jake, go back and check that for me.
Well, listeners of Illusion, as I'm sure you remember from the fairly recent audio clip of Dr. Paradox introducing this episode to us from Vandal Command, Martin is 100% correct in everything he says there. If you're interested in a bit more specific information about the Time Vandals' home era, this can be found at the beginning of the opening narration for TimeBusters Series 2, in which every episode begins with the declaration,
"From the 22nd century come the Time Vandals, led by the fanatical Dr. Paradox."
So it seems that in this particular episode, Dr. Paradox and Mr. Enigma have travelled back in time somewhere between 90 and 190 years, which certainly is well within their mission parameters of sabotaging the future by interfering with their past.
To complete the mission, the team have to find the time capsule hidden in the area and return it to the bus. We're reminded what one looks like and it allows time vandals to travel between time zones. If that's what it does, why do they keep leaving it places?
My question would actually be, if these time capsules are so important and they are the things that Dr. Paradox does not want the TimeBusters to get, why the hell does he just leave them on a table and walk away each time, or put them on the floor around the corner and walk away? Why does he just not keep them on himself? It doesn't make any sense within its own universe.
We are then reminded who the team are up against. Dr. Paradox is a master of disguise and is committed to changing the future by altering the timeline. He is known to carry a time freeze cannon, a weapon which can neutralize TimeBusters. So this wasn't in the last episode that we looked at, was it? This
Oh,
time
the
freeze
time
cannon.
freeze cannon is introduced in this episode, and we do see him holding it in the last sequence. He doesn't fire it at the TimeBusters, but he does in the other Futuroscope episode, if I remember correctly. So they're kind of introducing it in this episode, but for whatever reason, maybe the gameplay might have used it in this episode, but because of what they did, it wasn't used. Who knows? Because it's the same as Nightmare, where you've got a narrative and you've got an intention of what's going to happen, but that can change depending on what the contestants do. And I'm sure the same thing would apply here in true gameplay.
That sounds plausible.
Let's see if Infosys can give us some more on this strange city. Information, location, please.
Scanning, location scanning. Location identified and confirmed as Futuroscope City, massive 21st century Euro leisure complex specializing in audio-video arts. Scanning.
Okay. Now let's see if our roving eyes and ears are able to pinpoint the time vandalism. Switch to spy cams, please.
Don't panic. Stay calm, everyone. There's no need. Ouch! Suzanne, Miss Benbow, what's going on? For God's sake, where's the fire?
No fire. Feel awful. Dizzy. Sorry. I'm going to be sick. Sorry. All right now, I think.
I can't believe it. We tested virtual reality theatre #1 non-stop for 3 weeks. No problem then. Now, panic. Suzanne, what's happening?
I'm not sure, but it looks like the same trouble we had in Theatre 4. I was running the Desert Island virtual reality, and the one where you become a seagull and then a fish, and it was great, as usual. And then all the floors and the walls started to move, and it was horrible.
And they all felt the same. That's why they started to run.
I suppose so. Sorry, there wasn't anything I could do to stop it.
Mr. Jenks, Suzanne, what on earth's going on? More sabotage, I think. But I can't imagine how on earth they're doing it. Good heavens, what have you done with the virtuals? I don't want them wandering into all of this.
Oh, no worries. At least on that score, our friends from the Church of the Virtual Universe are happily exploring the park.
Nicely done, Mr. Enigma. No, don't look back.
Are they responding?
Yes. Running around in a blind, screaming panic. There's nothing like an artificial motion generator running on overload to sort out the stomach. Especially when you're watching virtual reality scenes at the same time.
So the task is done?
No. It'll take more than 2 isolated incidents to shut this place down. Do you have the stolen costume?
Yes, but
Don't talk, listen. It's time to reconnoiter our next inexplicable little disaster.
Losing contact? Contact lost.
So basically, the Time Vandals, Dr. Paradox, and Mr. Enigma have altered the city's virtual reality cinemas to make the walls and floors move. The idea being that everybody will get sick, nobody will want to go, and the city's economy will be crippled. So as we said before, what they've basically done, though, is they've turned them into motion simulators, which Futuroscope is known for.
You've got to deal with what's there, haven't you? That's what's there, so that's what you create in your fiction, I suppose.
Yeah. It's interesting that a Futuroscope let them do this, actually, because they're basically saying, oh, your rides are going to make everyone feel sick. I can't see it happening these days.
No, I mean, I can't imagine that if we went to a theme park and said we want to make a show about your roller coaster coming off the track, that they would allow that. You'd have to have a fictional theme park with a fictional roller coaster and rather than using an actual one like they're doing here.
Considering Futuroscope is still showcasing motion simulators in 2024, I'd say their plan was kind of destined to fail. Bonus points for the terrified customers running past the camera near the start of the clip too, which is obviously just regular French people.
Clearly, if you watch that shot, it's Dr. Paradox and Enigma. Is it? I can't remember. Anyway, it's 2 characters standing at the bottom of a staircase. Actually, I think it's not. I think it's the other characters. People coming out the theatre behind them in waves So there's clearly a member of production at the top, out of sight, saying, next 4 go, next 2 go, because they're coming out in waves. And they're all doing exactly the same thing, which is you run down the stairs and you put your hand on your stomach, which tells the viewer that you're feeling sick. And they all do this almost like robots. And as you can imagine, I'm sure that it would have simply been somebody saying to guests who'd like to be on television, this is what it is, and this is what you'd have to do, and sign your contributor release form, and that's that. I wonder if anybody that actually was on that shot actually ever saw the programme. Because, of course, they would have tourists from all over the world, so who knows?
Now, what do we make of all that?
Well, we think that Enigma wants to take over the park.
Yeah, he's using something to get people out of the theatres because making them feel sick.
Yeah. Any idea who Paradox might be?
Possibly
the guy with the black hair.
Or maybe the guy with the bald head.
No.
Does that mean there's more than one Time Vandal TVs?
Yes,
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, any idea what they're up to then?
Well, they said there's this artificial generator, movement generator.
To make people feel sick and stuff.
They could be using this in the virtual cinemas.
Okay, TVs. Well, this obviously won't be easy, but there again, nothing is. Now, we need to find someone in authority, TVs, or someone who'll believe us when we warn them about the Time Vandals.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've obviously also got to find some way to scupper that gadget they're using.
Yeah.
And we've got a strictly limited time to do it in, so, TimeBusters, go!
The 2 runners leave the bus and make their way to one of the locations shown on the VT, a structure shaped like a giant golf ball to find someone in authority. This is a theme park designed to look futuristic, so of course, like every futuristic theme park, it has to have a giant golf ball.
Well, that, of course, all goes back to Disney, as most things do in theme park world. The original one was called Epcot's Central Feature, which is Spaceship Earth, the first sort of theme park golf ball. And as you say, so many people have replicated that now, including Futuroscope.
The controllers tell them to look for anyone in a yellow blazer. Ignoring a couple of robots at the entrance, they run into the building and are accosted by city official Charlotte Deverell, played by Sidrus actor Iona Kennedy. The robots are making a heck of a noise, so Charlotte leaves the runners outside to talk without so much distraction. I think these robots, they look like mascots. I think they might have been part of the...
They would have simply been... I mean, I've worked in theme parks most of my life on and off. They would simply have been theme park entertainment. They wouldn't have been part of the production. They would just have been there for that purpose. And obviously, it's quite nice, though, because if you are in a futuristic city, there might be a robot. So perhaps the production got a free appearance. Or maybe they gave them some money because they were used on the camera. Who knows? But yeah, I strongly suspect that those would have been part of the theme park rather than part of the production team.
Yeah.
Adam, there may be
Adam.
time.
All right,
Susan. Just get out here and let's be in the
Right,
car
Adam.
in the clear.
Will you ask?
Suzanne, do you know Suzanne?
Suzanne Benbow.
Can we please see her? Suzanne.
Well, no, actually, what I'd like to do is just have you checked out by my head of media entertainment, Mr. Janks.
Yeah.
If you just listen carefully.
Mr. Janks.
This is Theatre 1.
This is
His
Theatre 1.
office is behind Theatre 1.
Right.
You go down by the lake, and it's behind the waterfall. Now, I have a map here.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
And I'm just
much.
going, and don't stop. I'm going to telephone over. A
Okay.
radio over for you.
Okay, really quickly.
Hello,
really
Suzanne.
quickly.
Yeah, we're coming.
Having been given a city map, which looks like a regular park map, with the names of the attractions edited out, the runners make their way towards a structure that somewhat resembles Superman's Fortress of Solitude. They go past this and head towards a water feature where they find Mr. Jank.
Mr. Janks, yes. Bertram Janks. Oh, no, it's Jax, because on the credit it says Jax. So officially it's Bertram Jax.
Oh, is it?
Played by Tom Knight.
So this city map, do you think it is a theme park map, or...
I don't think it is a theme park map. It is a theme park map.
Okay, fair enough. It wasn't something they had drawn up especially.
Absolutely not. That is simply a theme park map, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you do? I'm Bertram Janks. I'm the director here, yes.
Okay, there was this, there's a group of time vandals who are trying to destroy this complex. They've been shaking up the virtual reality cinemas.
Basically,
and
theatres
we're here
1
to
and
stop
4.
them. 1 and 4. Do you know
And we're
anything
here to
about what
stop them.
happened?
You're going to stop them?
Yes.
Yes, we're trying to stop them.
And what do they look like?
Well, one of them has a
Bald head and a
He's-
gold earring.
And
Have
a
you
gold
seen
earring.
him
He's got
anywhere?
a black jacket on,
And he's
and
wearing
the
a black
other
jacket.
has got short
Black hair with a beard.
black hair with a dinosaur
sideburns.
beard.
The virtuals?
Are they the virtuals?
Are you talking about the virtuals?
Yes.
Yes.
I see. And just exactly how are they going to do this?
Well, we're not quite sure.
Yeah,
That's what we're trying to discover.
They've got a machine
which makes people think the room is shaking about and so makes them feel sick.
And they rush out.
Sick and dizzy.
Do you know, what's her name? Suzanne.
Suzanne
Do you know
Benbow.
where Suzanne is?
Yes, I know Suzanne Benbow,
Do you know where
yes.
she is?
Yes, I
We
do.
need to see her. We need to see her.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we think she knows about it.
And you think you can stop this one?
Yes, we do.
We do.
Mr. Jacks radios Suzanne and asks where she is. She tells him that she's by Theatre 5. Mr. Jacks points them in the right direction and the team head on their way.
And they're all wearing these yellow blazers in a very Butlins redcoat style fashion in an attempt, I suppose, to look like members of staff in a future city. But here is the thing I thought this stood out. They're all holding these brick-sized, very antiquated walkie-talkie radios, which several cast members say are telephones incorrectly at one point and then correct themselves. One of them says, "I'll just telephone Mr. Jacks." And then she says, "I'll just radio Mr. Jacks," remembering that she's got a radio, not a telephone. But they are really, very old school radios. However, they do look more modern than the awful communication device that we see Dr. Paradox using, which has various tubes coming off it and doesn't look modern at all. So, yeah, the radios are quite fun. And they've got a clear piece of masking tape over the logo on the radio as well, which is very obvious.
The communication device that Paradox uses looks kind of almost homemade, which in a way would kind of fit the character if he's part of this like little resistance group that's going around trying to sabotage things. I guess they wouldn't necessarily have the top technology.
That's an interesting thought. And yet they have these freeze cannons and a TARDIS-like ship that can travel backwards and forwards in time. But their communication device consists of a plastic tube that really looks like it should be inserted into your arm rather than used for communication. I suppose it's an attempt to be steampunky slightly, although that's not really the aesthetic. But I do remember thinking at the time that the communication device held by Paradox looked wrong. It didn't look futuristic. I just don't like it, but let's be honest.
Can you look around you just so we can see where you are? We're just going past a restaurant, I think.
No, not this way. I think it's that way.
You're going the right way.
Checkmate,
Yeah,
TVs.
You are
we're
going the right way.
for a dome, all right? Can you see Suzanne at the top?
No, I can't.
She's gone out a picture, all right?
I can see her. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Who's that
Okay,
one?
David.
Well, you see, I'm not really sure.
Right, ask for information.
Hello?
This is I'm Adam. And this is Becky.
Oh, Adam and Becky, yes. Oh, Mr. Janks, yes, they've come over now. Okay. Yes.
We believe you were involved in the incidents in theatres 1 and 4.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are these people called Time Vandals, and we believe that
Time Vandals? So
they're going
what?
under the name of the Virtuals.
Oh, the virtual. Oh, do you want to join the virtual?
No,
Right,
you
Adam,
don't. No,
ask if she knows any
another kind of
information about the virtuals.
Ask her if she knows anything about what?
The
And a
virtuals.
gold earring, a shaved head.
Yes.
Where
yes.
did he go?
He was a virtual.
Yes.
Yes.
Where
What do you
did he
know
go?
about the virtuals?
Where did he go?
What I know about the virtuals is that they're some strange cult. They kind of just
Yes,
run
right.
around.
I love that description. Some strange cult that kind of just run around.
Yes, we've got another subtext here, haven't we? That actually the Dr. Paradox and Mr. Enigma are actually cult church of the virtual incantation or whatever they called it. Yeah, very, very odd to have this another level of subtext here and a new storyline that's totally irrelevant.
Yeah, but I just love the fact they get around explaining exactly what the cult is by just telling people they just run around.
Yes.
Suzanne tells the runners that she's been looking for the virtuals herself and somebody told her they were seen in Theatre 6. In more realistic circumstances, it seemed that the team could have saved a lot of running around by asking Mr. Jacks to check with Suzanne where the virtuals were instead of just sending him off to meet her.
If she's the head of security, which is what she says she is, surely she'd know where everybody was at every moment anyway, even in the mid-1990s when everything's covered in CCTV and monitoring, and yet they're relying on these very antiquated radios and don't seem to know where anybody is.
She's not a very good head of security, really, is she?
Not really, no.
But I guess they had to have them running around a bit so they could fill out time.
Of course, yeah.
Who is it who plays Suzanne?
Suzanne is played by Eileen Gonzalez, or I may have said her surname wrong. She was not a regular on TimeBusters, but she was in both of the episodes filmed in Futuroscope in Poitiers in France. So she was Suzanne Benbow, and she's sort of the ditzy, slightly airheaded character in this show, which reminded me actually of Sidrus, as the performance of Sidrus by Yona Kennedy in Nightmare. But in this episode, Yona Kennedy is not. She is the head of security, and Eileen is the airheaded character. But I thought she played it really nicely. I quite like all the characters in TimeBusters. I mean, obviously we're picking it all apart here, but it's not because we don't like it. I think it's great. And actually, these 2 episodes filmed at Futuroscope are among the best, I think, despite their obvious weaknesses and problems.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Heading to Theatre 6. Can you see that on your map? Can you give us directions? We're at Theatre 5.
Right, okay, go along that path you're on.
Right, okay. Along the path. Right,
No,
we're
keep
heading
it
along
on
this
that, keep it
path.
on
Can
there.
you see us?
Yeah, I can see you.
Right,
Hey, there's
now
someone
we
in
are
the...
then.
Wait a second.
There's a huge map up ahead. Do you want us to have a look at it?
You don't really need to, there's not much time.
The runners passed by several bewildered-looking French people, almost all of them staring at the runners or directly at the camera.
At least we don't see the cameras in this episode. There are various episodes of TimeBusters filmed in heritage properties with mirrors, and occasionally you can see a cameraman just going out of shot on the mirror if you look in the background, occasionally.
There is a bit later on, there is a very egregious shot of this older gentleman just like literally walking right up to the runners and just openly staring at them and leaning in to look at what they're looking at.
Well, you can't do anything about that, can you? I suppose they may, I mean, I'm just guessing, this may not be true, but they may have had the option of filming at night. And when perhaps the park would have been closed, but of course it would be night, and therefore that poses 100 other problems with television production. So therefore they've filmed it during the day, and probably, I mean, thinking about it, you probably want to have lots of people milling around. You're saying this is a city in the future; there are going to be people, so it's probably beneficial. But like you say, unfortunately, you do end up with people staring and wondering what on earth is going on here. Which I suppose, when you think about it, within the conceit of the show. The conceit of the show is that these children have come from the 1990s and have gone forwards to 2010. So if that was the case, and they're wearing things that in 2010 people wouldn't think, you know, what are you wearing that peculiar helmet for? You might stare at them. So maybe within the conceit of its own universe, it makes sense. You could argue that, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess you could, couldn't you?
Yeah.
TVs, listen up. I've got some news from my spy in the sky. Shall I play it in now?
Yeah.
Okay, transmitting to virtual visors.
Hey! Where do you think you're going with that?
It's a delivery of canned smoke and mist effects. They're running out in Theatre 6.
Just a minute.
Just a minute. I'm Charlotte Devil, security. Who are you?
Marc Dubois. I'm fairly new here. Sorry, I hadn't realised it was a restricted area.
No, all right. It's not normally a restricted zone. It's just for troubles, that's all. All right. Come with me and I'll show you where they belong. And Dubois,
Yes?
draw a name badge from admin by the end of the day. You're breaking company regs. Now, come on.
What do you reckon, TVs?
Dubois' Enigma, because it's his earring.
David, we think that the time capsule is hidden in the crate.
Yeah, the gas is the time capsule. They were outside 1, but they were heading for Theatre 6.
So that's where we've got to go.
to number 1.
The smoke effects, we're going to number 6.
So we're going to head over there.
Okay, TVs.
Rosie,
Yes?
can you get some more information on the virtuals?
The virtuals?
Yeah.
Okay.
As the runners head to Theatre 6, Rosie logs into Infosys to get more info on the virtuals. This is quite a fast-paced one, isn't it? It's probably more fast-paced than the Stokesay Castle episode.
It's quite fast-paced, but it has zero content.
There's definitely more story to the Stokesay Castle episode.
Yes. I think this episode relies much more on the fact that it's in the future, which is different, and the venue is amazing, and it really is on camera and, you know, from the point of view of narrative and storyline. So it relies much more on that than the actual narrative of what's happening, because actually what happens is you get Mr. Enigma leaving his very important machine that's going to do all this damage by a door, which they then throw into a lake, and it's clearly made of polystyrene or some other very light material that floats, because when you throw it in the lake, it's very bad, you know, that's very bad for the climate. And surely in 2010 we wouldn't have just chucked this very dangerous weapon into the pond and then dismiss it as, oh, thank goodness that's done with now then. If it was that good a piece of nefarious equipment, would it really have just destroyed it by throwing it in a bit of water?
I don't believe it! It was ray-shielded and missile-shielded, but not waterproof!
I thought that was funny when they did that rather than good, exciting to watch. I thought that's a really odd thing to do. We'll just chuck it in the pond.
Kind of reminds me of Plan 9 from Outer Space. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Legendarily bad film, like the Godfather of bad movies, basically.
Okay.
And it's like the aliens have this weapon that can bring the dead back to life and control them. And to stop it, you know what you got to do? You just throw it on the floor.
Oh.
And there's like an in-universe explanation as to why that works, but it's still just throwing it on the floor.
Church of the Virtual Incarnation, members also known as Virtuals, quasi-religious cult of fanatical games players, technocrats and computer boffins, Virtuals found computers more interesting than real life. Scanning. The cult was at its height early in 21st century. The Virtuals were eventually infiltrated and taken over by time vandals who sought to use the cult for their own devious purposes.
Paradox, logging experiment AX14F. As I await the arrival of another potential convert to our cause, I note the chances of success for this operation remain steady at 64%. TimeBusters are on site and attempting to interfere, but as I predicted, they're finding it harder to travel forwards in time rather than backwards. So far, their attempts have been ineffective. One more virtual reality shutdown, and we will have achieved our main objective. Paradox out.
We return to the runners, who are looking for a box of canned smoke effects. They're inside a glass structure, heading up some stairs. At the top, they encounter Mr. Enigma, disguised as a member of staff. At least they are, making a little bit of an effort to kind of disguise the time capsule by hiding it in a bunch of things that have a similar shape and look, but it's completely negated.
Later on, that's thrown in the bin, forgotten about, and he just says, "Oh, just put it here on the side, and then I'll walk away. They'll never find it." He's very not particularly good at planning, is he? Because if the whole purpose of Dr. Paradox is to not allow the TimeBusters to find the time/energy capsule, then he does a very bad job of it, because surely you just keep it yourself on you rather than put it down on the side where they're going to pick it up. But that's never mentioned.
At the top of the stairs, they encounter Mr. Enigma, disguised as a member of staff, with his toupee.
Fabulous toupee.
They don't realise it's him at first, do they?
I think this is because if you watch the episode, at the top of the show, when the first VT vignette is played to the team, Buster is clearly trying to see if they've understood the various elements of it, because he says, "So who do we think Dr. Paradox is?" And then, "So are there two time vandals?" And they go, "Yeah." So he's basically telling them the things they've just seen and clarifying it. And then we have this supposition of, well, which one is it? Is it the one with black hair or is it the one with the bald head? And so that's creating a little bit of confusion and therefore content and gameplay for the Time Buster contestants, I suppose. Doesn't matter, it makes no difference, but it's some content.
And then, of course, when they do find him, he's not bald, though.
Absolutely, he's changed. And that's clever, I suppose, because if you think, if I'm a time vandal and I want to put a piece of bad equipment into your system to make it go wrong, there are going to be lots of members of staff around, including the very good security guard, Charlotte Deverell. Therefore, you will have to disguise yourself as a member of staff. So that's good within the fiction of the narrative, that works. And like you say, the contestants don't recognise him because he's not bald, and that's clever.
You! What are you doing here?
TB's,
This
who's there?
is an exit, not an entrance. Get out!
Mr. Burr, have you seen... Excuse me.
TB's, it's Enigma, get out of there!
Right, we're going... Right, we've got to... It's true, the trouble is... I think
he's going to follow you, just hide, okay?
The runners escape from Enigma and hide around a corner. They wait for him to leave the building before sneaking back in. They head back up the stairs, and hidden in an alcove by a door, they find the piece of machinery that they surmise must be the artificial motion generator. They decide to take it back to Mr. Jacks. Why does he leave the building and leave the motion generator there?
For the same reason that Dr. Paradox decides to put the time capsule on the table and walk away, even though he doesn't want anyone to find it. That is a true enigma. Why?
Paradox, this is Enigma. TimeBusters heading your way. Cut them off.
Paradox gives chase, but before he can locate the runners, they come across Mr. Jacks. They hand over the machine and tell him that Enigma has infiltrated the staff using a disguise. Jax throws the machine into an artificial pond, neutralising it. He tells the team that Suzanne has been keeping an eye on the virtuals since their last conversation. To be honest, that's not really kind of promising, is it?
She obviously hasn't, because one of them's now in a yellow outfit with the toupee, so she can't have been keeping an eye on him, what she would have known. Because she's the one who says, who are you? Oh, you're a member of staff, go and get a name badge. So she can't have been keeping an eye on them because she'd just seen him change.
Jax radios her and she tells him that she's got her eye on them. As you say, obviously she hasn't. Do you know who I feel really sorry for is the poor sap who had to go in and get that thing out of the lake afterwards.
Yes. Well, I just laughed at it when I rewatched it because they throw it over and it's obviously very light because it floats and it turns over as it goes into the pond, and it's clearly polystyrene or some other plastic because it's just white underneath where they haven't painted it, and that's what you see in the pond. And there's this awful sound effect which has been put on in post-production as a sort of neutralizing sound to try and make it a bit more dramatic and a bit more believable, which doesn't work at all.
They're not going to get out of my sight very easily.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm round the other side of Theatre 1. They're acting very suspiciously. I think we should call the police.
Are both of the virtuals
Not
there?
yet, not yet.
Not yet, Suzanne, not yet. You leave the police to me. What?
Are both of the virtuals there?
Do you have both of the virtuals there?
Whereabouts
Yes,
is it, sorry?
Yeah, whereabouts
Right,
is this?
Theatre 1, round
It's
the other side of
I'm going to
Theatre
send these two young people to you now. Okay, Suzanne?
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
They're on their way now. On the way, the other side of Theatre 1.
Right, quickly.
Good luck.
Right, well done. Go on, quick as you can.
We're going.
Starting to feel a power drain, TVs. Let's make tracks.
The runners spot Suzanne and race towards her, calling her name to get her attention. As the 3 minutes countdowns appear, she tells them that the vandals got away, surprise, surprise, as she was talking to Mr. Jax. She says she last saw them by the children's playground.
That's the place you'd go if you were an escaping villain. Either that or the carousel, or maybe the candy floss shop.
TVs, listen up. I've got some interesting stuff through, and I really think you ought to see it.
Okay, then. Okay.
Shield your eyes, because here it comes.
Paradox, come in. Paradox, where the devil are you, man? I'm here, Enigma. And I'm waiting for you to report success.
Well, it's not success. It's failure. TimeBusters have captured the motion generator, and now they're on our track. What's more, I've been spotted. So this disguise is useless.
As useless as you, Enigma! Now get back on the bridge and report the TimeBusters' position! In the meantime, I shall make sure that the motion generator is the only device that TimeBusters capture.
Paradox hides the time capsule in a nook inside some sort of stone structure. I say hides, it's more like places.
He puts it down there, like many episodes of TimeBusters. Yeah, it's clearly forgotten that, you know, in the last 30-odd episodes of TimeBusters, when he's done that, they just pick it up. He hasn't learned. He does not learn very well, does he?
The team spot what appears to be some kind of tower housing a staircase going down. This tower looks completely out of place to me. It's obviously meant to look stone. It's not. It's some kind of artificial.
The way they make things like that is with a sort of steel structure with rods, and then it gets sprayed with spray concrete, basically, to make it look like stone. I think if you look at Futuroscope, each of the buildings is intentionally different from each other. So this is perhaps why this structure is intended to look like it's carved from stone, rather than being a mirrored reflective surface or the various other aesthetics that you get at Futuroscope.
They rush down the stairs and they're able to grab the capsule. With 1 minute left on the clock, they leg it back up the stairs and attempt to find their way back to the bus, with both Enigma and Paradox in pursuit. This bit's actually a little bit exciting.
A little bit, because he's holding the neutralizing gun, but he doesn't shoot it. There is a cutaway shot, a pickup shot that's also been inserted afterwards where he's holding it up as if he's going to shoot it, but that he doesn't. Maybe he's all in a muddle because he can't work out how on earth they managed to find the time capsule and throw the other machine in the pond. You know, everything's going wrong for Paradox.
Great stuff!
Come on!
Come on, quickly.
Keep an eye out for Paradox. Turn around!
You're going the wrong way.
Time's running out. Come on, you've got to get back to the bus.
Just run as fast as you can. Just go quick.
Hold on, lads! Enigma, can you hear me? After them!
TVs, you've got to get back to the bus. Come on!
Quickly!
Can you see the bridge? Well done. Brilliant. Excellent. Go on, you can do it.
Come on, TVs!
Paradox is
Run! Quick as you can! Come on! Go on, you're going to make it, you're going to make it! Well done! Well done! Yes! Yeah, quickly! Well done!
With 8 seconds left on the clock, the capsule is neutralised. The team has successfully defeated the Time Vandals and apparently saved the world from the evils of motion simulator rides at the same time, and cults that just kind of run about.
Well, maybe in the future, Paradox won't be too keen on the 21st century. Yeah. Let's get back to the past and our present. Good win, TBs. This is Buster, over and out of here.
And that's that. So, from my point of view, yes, it's fun and I enjoyed it. Despite that, actually nothing happens in this episode.
No, it's very silly.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of works to his advantage.
I think the good bits about it are that we see Paradox on location in his outfit as Dr. Paradox, rather than pretending to be another character. Because he's wearing the costume that he wears in the intros to each episode, which are clearly filmed in a studio at another play at some other time. And Enigma is initially wearing a secondary Time Vandal costume, and we get to see what those look like. And I think that's fun, because that doesn't happen in the other episodes. It only happens in these two. So I enjoyed that. And I think the location itself, spectacular. I'd never seen a theme park like that. It is beautiful to look at, amazing location. And that, from those points of view, I think it's a good episode. But from the point of view of the story, it's just completely all over the place.
I still want to visit the theme park as well. I did look into it a bit. They have kind of sold out a little bit and added a Minions ride, but I think we can forgive them for that.
Absolutely, you'd have to. I mean, nowadays people wouldn't go to a park just for motion sensors and virtual reality. You can get that at home. You just put your headset on. So yeah, if they've got rides, I'm not surprised. I'm just glad they're still open. And as you said, I'd like to go as well. I'd very much enjoy that.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us a rating and review on your platform of choice. It really helps us to grow our audience by reaching others who might be interested.
You can follow us on Twitter. We're at NightmarePod, and our Mastodon is topspicy.social at NightmarePod.
If you want to support the podcast, we're NightmarePod on Patreon.
Speaking of Patreon, here's a shout out to Keepers of the Book of Quests, David N. Rabbit, Paul McIntosh, Peter Paulsford, and Scott Evans.
Advisors Benjamin Bloom, David Thompson, Kim Harder, which is a silly surname, Peter Sidon, Paul Craddy, Lord Entropy where the O is a 0, Stephen Whalen, and Kim Stewart Crossley.
And let's not forget Dungeoneers Peter Courage and Adam Battersby.
Support us on Patreon at Dungeoneer level or above to get your name mentioned on the podcast. Higher level perks also receive merchandise, have access to exclusive episodes, and if you pledge as a Keeper of the Book of Quests, we'll even offer you the chance to be a guest on the podcast.
Our website is nightmarepod.co.uk.
If you're looking for temporal discussion merchandise, including t-shirts, stickers and other products, it's at nightmarepod.redbubble.com. You can email us at podcast@nightmarepod.co.uk.
And don't forget, they just run around a bit.